Well, good morning. Welcome to my office. The last week of the calendar year, anticipating the coming of a new year, the turning of the calendar. I want to share some thoughts with you this week. Not a word of the week, but a bits from Bob. How to improve my spiritual life. I want to think with you about some important principles as we begin the new year. Words for this life, words for the life to come. Always thinking about God's eternal plan and purpose with written copy on my website. Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "Plans are nothing, planning is everything." As we prepare for the turning of the calendar, an old year will end, a new year will begin. I prefer strategic planning over making resolutions. Great truth. We do not get to decide if the next year will be a great year. We only get to decide if we will be great. A new year focused on meaningful spiritual goals aligned with God's eternal purpose, improving our spiritual lives. None of that begins on January 1. Waiting until January 1 means that we will be behind right out of the starting blocks. For me, the direction, the tenor of my life, of the new year, begins in that magical time between Christmas and New Year's. The last week, sometimes I can find 10 days of relative calm to help make plans, strategic planning for the calendar year that is coming. For me, growing spiritually begins with planning and commitments that are made at the end of the previous year. The influence I have on others is intentional, the result of advanced planning. My spiritual leadership depends and is shaped by how I prepare myself to lead. Taking time to ask what is possible in the coming year sets the bar high. So I share today 5 questions, 5 benefits. Perhaps 10 items is too many, but I remember there were 10 commandments. So perhaps we can remember a part of these. You can choose one or two in each of the categories. 5 questions that help me as I think about strategic planning. I know that planning incorporates concepts of place, process, and possibilities, but that's easily theoretical. So I share 5 questions I use to help me think about the year to come, but to analyze the year past. What are some victories, some positives I want to repeat? How do I go about doing that? How can I repeat the things that went well? What actions or relationships contribute to my spiritual growth? How can those be nurtured? What of those actions and relationships need to be discarded? Number 3, what obstacles must I address? Number 4, what 2 or 3 things do I need to change, eliminate to maintain spiritual vitality and passion? And number 5, what is my one thing? What one thing could I do or change? What one thing could be my focus to transform my spiritual life? 5 questions. Analyzing the year past. What I want to repeat, what needs to be nurtured, be careful, change some things, be sure I'm focused on what really matters. And there are 5 benefits that come as a result of that kind of strategic planning. One is that my calendar fills first with spiritually focused priorities. My 2025 calendar is already beginning to fill pretty significantly. And I want to focus on what is eternal over what is urgent. If we're not careful, the tyranny of the urgent eats up all of our time. And if we're not focused, we end up spending time in events and activities and games and media and television and other things that make little difference. I want to choose things that matter. So I need to fill my calendar with eternal priorities, events that are designed for spiritual impact, leadership. This kind of planning protects my calendar. The second thing that happens as a result of that is I get to start the year at full speed. Planning and preparation trump aspirations, resolution, and foundationless hopelessness or hopefulness. My spiritual commitments help me live proactively. I maintain a focus. My spiritual growth is number one, and those goals shape my schedule. Reading, meditating, writing, those kinds of priorities don't get pushed down on the to-do list. And having a spiritual template also helps me continue forward when the going gets tough. I can continue with the same fervor, the same focus I had at the beginning, following the plan, but making adjustments as needed. So how do you improve your spiritual life? This is a question I address at the end of every year. There are many ways that I do it, but I share with you at the end of this year 5 questions and 5 benefits. Think about the year past. What do we need to repeat? What kinds of activities and relationships do we want to nurture? Be cautious about obstacles, change the things that are necessary, and stay focused. And fill that calendar with eternal priorities. Let's begin well. Live proactively, not reactively, and focus so that we can follow through. I hope that for you, that 2025 will be a tremendous year. Not because all of the circumstances around you are great, but because we are what God calls us to be. Remember that God loves you. I love you. That's the way it's going to be. My prayer for you is that 2025 might be a year for improving our spiritual lives, our walk with God, and the way we make a difference in this world. God bless.